Hi, my name's Darren and I'm the machine shop supervisor here at Maton Guitars. Once the timber arrives, it's my job to dry the timber and then rehydrate it, grade the timber into various qualities and sort it into its components that it's going to be used for. Here at Maton we love our Australian timbers, and we love them for a few reasons. Because they're Australian, because they're a renewable resource, and because they're great tone woods as well. Now we've got some examples here. We've got some sassafras, which we use for our bass bodies. Some Queensland maple, self-explanatory where that's from. We've got some bunya pine, which is also from Northern Australia. And if you come around here, all this is our blackwoods, which comes from Victorian Otway ranges. And this is our favourite timber. And we use it for backs, sides, and necks, and electric bodies, their caps, and as many components as we can. It's a beautiful tone wood. I'm going to talk to you about grain direction now and why it's important in the processes. We've got some examples here. We've got some blackwood, and this is what we call quarter sawn grain direction. Okay, that's where you can see all the grain lines going that way. And we've got a piece of Queensland maple here, which is back sawn. Okay, and you can see the grain lines going that way. All the components that we use have to be quarter sawn for strength and stability. Okay, so something like the blackwood there, which will end up being sliced for backs. Okay, and we'll be slicing that across the grain like that. And what we'll end up with there is a sliced up billet like that, and the result being a book matched blackwood back like that, perfectly butterflied. Now with the Queensland maple, I said earlier all components have to be quarter sawn, and we're using a back sawn piece of timber here. What we'll be using that for is acoustic necks, and you can see that it's already marked out there. So when you cut that acoustic neck out like that, you end up with the grain direction being quarter sawn. I'm standing outside one of our 3 drying kilns, and I'll take you inside now to show you what sort of timbers we dry in there. I call this the dry hot room. That's because it just pumps dry hot air in here, as opposed to another hot room which pumps wet hot air into there. That's for our really wet green timbers. This hot room's mainly for our timbers that are partially dry, and I set it at a temperature that's conducive to a various amount of timbers. Every timber takes a different drying process, but we have to store a lot of different types of timber in this hot room. For example, we have some ebony fingerboards, which is a very, very dense timber. And next we've got some spruce, which isn't so dense and can be dried at a much hotter temperature. But I have to keep this environment conducive to both. That's why it's only partially dry timbers that go in here. We also have some cedar for some faces, some spruce bracewood, which will be processed into internal bracing for the guitars, some Indian rosewood fingerboards, and we also have some mahogany, and some more mahogany which will be used for acoustic necks. So in order to dry all those timbers together, we have to keep this at a temperature and a moisture content that's not going to be detrimental to any of those timbers. One of the most popular machines, or common machines that we use here is a bandsaw. Many of you are already familiar with that. And what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to bandsaw out some acoustic neck blanks out of this piece of Queensland maple. Okay, so after we've bandsawed out our neck blank, we've rebaited a trench in the neck there, and we've glued a heel block into that trench there to form the final part of the neck, the heel on it. After that, we use our jigs and the spindle moulders, and what we do is we'll machine the front of the headstock, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to machine the inside profile using both of these cutter heads. This is our joining paddle. This is where we join all of our faces, solid backs, electric caps, things like that. What we've got here is a twin head horizontal resaw. So effectively what that is like two bandsaws lying in the side on top of each other. As it feeds through, the two blades cut two slices off a billet of timber, and at the other end we have one book match back set. Okay, so this is what's called a wide belt sander. Now what we have inside here, effectively got two sanding heads. We've got the first one, which has got 100 grit paper on it, and the second head has got 150 grit paper on it. So it's effectively getting sanded twice on one pass.
Craig from Maton Guitars. I do the CNC programming. I've been here for 17 years, been doing the CAD/CAM work for the last 8 years. When I started we had just two SEM machines, now we've just got one SEM and another two VSE, so I've upgraded to another extra machine. Okay, I've just loaded up a BB1200 back cut. This is basically the actual toolpath. You can see is the blue line. The yellow is our imported surface that we use from Rhino that we projected our toolpath onto. So we can just run a simulation and see how that works. At the moment we're just carving the BB cap, so first we start off with just a little surface cutter, planing the surface, then we ball cut the internal surface and drill out some location holes. We have the finished BB cap with internal carving, location holes, surface plane and a glue trench for the wood machinist.
name's Tim. I've been working at Maton for about 8 years, and the machine I'm working on today is a multi-cam CNC. On this machine we make faces and backs, and we dovetail necks and bodies. The backs we usually take up to this stage, which is a back strip which we route out and also cut out the shape. We also cut the sound hole and the trench for the rosettes. And actually this is the body that we would prepare, and we would cut out a dovetail and attach the neck to it. Okay, what I'm going to do now is cut a dovetail joint in a body and a neck, and enable it to be put together and assembled. First thing I've got to do is drill some locating holes. So now I've got the locating holes, I can put this in the machine. So after a lot of noise and a lot of sawdust, we've now got a dovetail cut in the body and a dovetail cut in the neck. It's just a matter of fitting these in. This Maton Guitar is now going off to assembly, and after that it'll go to paint.
Hi, my name's Zeb. This is facing back at Maton. I'm going to show you how to get to this final product here. You can see the face has been inlaid with the rosette. It's been sanded to spec. And the back strip's been glued on and notches cut out for the back bars. So these are our bar blanks. I'm going to shape these up. One is an 808X, and these two are going to be our scalloped X for our Messiah. Next step is marking out our profile for the 808. Just got a couple of marks here that are going to guide us for our ramps. For the scallop decks, it's a little bit more involved. We've got to trace out the pattern. So the vacuum presses do a couple of things. Number one, they give us a very good join by creating pressure all around the bar, meaning we get a very good glue join. And second, they take a lot of time out of the drying process of the glue. So it takes about 1/5 of the time that it normally would if it was out in the open air.
name's Gabriel. I'm the side vendor here at Maton. And basically my job is to get one of these and turn it into one of these. So let's get into it. Okay, the first step is to grab this pile of blanks, and we just want to match it with this back that I've selected. So I'll just go through and match the colours with each one and see what looks nice and what's the closest to the grain and colour. That one's looking pretty close, so I just test it with some Prepsol just to see the shininess. This is a gloss finish guitar. You keep the Prepsol wet and this is what it will look like when it's finished. That looks like a perfect match, so I'm going to go with that one. For the first side I'm going to be bending in the standard cutaway press. I keep these presses about 140 degrees, so it's nice and hot. I'll be using these two pieces of spring steel, not for the support, but because I'm bending rosewood, it leaves a really nasty tannin stain, as you can see there. So I like to get that so I don't stain the presses and it doesn't leach onto all my other sides. I keep this water is about a little bit cooler than the hot water you get in a tap. I like to keep it nice and hot. It makes the wood very flexible when you pull it out. And you keep it soaked for roughly, I don't know, 20 seconds maybe, depending on the wood. Since this is rosewood, it's very porous and very flexible. So I just pull it out once I've soaked it. And I can feel that that's quite pliant, so that will be ready for bend. We'll just give that another quick little dip and put it in the press. Perfect. I come around. I have to be very tight, with a lot of pressure on this because I don't want any bumps on the side. And tighten this nice and tight. Now this stays in the press for, since it's solid wood, stays in for about 10 minutes. So it, basically takes all the water out and leaves the side nice and, perfect. Now the Messiah cutaway should be ready, so I'm just going to pull it out. Yep, nice and dry, so ready. I'll just pull it out and make sure I hold the sides because it's incredibly hot. Now I'm just looking at it, checking for any cracks or creases in the wood, anything that could have gone wrong. It seems to be good. I'll just check for lumps. Yep. That's looking very nice. And that's ready to go on to the next stage, the bodybuilding.
Hi there, my name's Ray and I work in the bodybuilding section, Maton Guitars, making the acoustic bodies, and I'll take you through the process. Well, the first part is the jig that we use. So we have one here. This is just a standard jig that has a face and a back. So the first thing, I get my jig and then I get my sides. So my first job is to get these to fit perfectly within the jig. Now I know how much to trim off, so I'll now trim the ends. Just a little trim. Okay, I'm going to put a control plate in now. So that'll sit in here, so I'm just going to measure it to fit. That fits, so I'm going to clamp it in now. Glue and clamp. This is now ready to be trimmed on the floating router to get a perfect finish ready for the backs and faces. Okay, the walnut cutaway guitar that I'm building, we have the face and the back pre-cut. This structure, it reinforces the face, but it also gives acoustic integrity as well. Making sure that the bars fit into the slots very snugly and a perfect fit. Now placing it into the press, and pneumatic press works on about 90 psi, and that'll sit in there now for about 10 minutes. And now I'll just check it to make sure everything is glued down. Looks good. So that's as far as I take the guitar body now. It's ready to go to the next section where they'll trim off all this, do the rebating around the edges, sand it, smooth it, etc., etc., etc.
Hi, I'm Leon, leading hand of body prep. This section is responsible for binding guitars, a process which gives guitars both aesthetic and structural property. We also are responsible for giving guitars a final sand and a final check over before they go to paint shop and get a coat of paint. How about we get started? So I'm about to rebate this Aussie. The Aussie has herringbone inner binding and solid blackwood outer binding. So this specific bit has a shelf in it which will help accommodate for both these inner bindings. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the back. The back of an Aussie has a single outer and a pinstripe inner. Probably couldn't ask for a better rebate. So the first thing I'm going to do is install the back pinstripe. The EA80 has two pinstripes, one which is visible from the back and one which is visible from the side. This pinstripe is made of a rock maple. It's a pretty nice contrast against the blackwood. So just like the pinstripe on the back, we're going to prep the inner herringbone binding for the face. So we're going to have obviously the cutaway on this side, dreadnought on that. And I don't know how well you can see, but the herringbone has a bit of inconsistency. So what I'm going to do is comb through all of them and try to find a nice match. So when you look down the middle, there's a nice book match in the herringbone. As you can see, the inner binding doesn't fit perfectly to the body of the guitar. So I'm going to heat it up a little so it can conform, which will make binding a whole lot easier. Okay, that's looking pretty good to me. The only thing I'm going to do is just have a little date with a stroke sander to just clean off any little excess. So now that all the tape's taken off, you can probably see now that the inner binding conforms to the guitar a lot nicer than it did before. The last thing I'm going to do for the inner binding is just clean up that join, so when they sit in front of each other, it's going to look just like a perfect mirror. There will be 4 pieces of binding that go around the guitar. 2 on the back, 2 on the face. So I'm using the exact same presses that were used to bend up the sides of that guitar. That way, these will conform exactly. I'm just going to trim these up, similar to the pinstripe and the herringbone, so they meet nicely at the center line. And with that last bit of tape, we're done. Not too bad. In about 2 days' time, we'll come and look at this again, but for now, let's have lunch. All right, we're back. So this has been sitting resting for a little while. We just gave it time for the glue to cure and make sure that everything is like adhering really nicely. So we're gonna just remove this tape, gently of course. We don't want to tear out any of the face or the back. Timber has a tendency to do that with the grain. Face and back are done, so now it's time to work on the sides. That's where our good friend the scraper comes in handy. Sharpening these is probably 9/10 of the job. Getting it really nice and sharp will make my job a lot easier. Visually and even by feel, I can tell that I've gotten all the little protruding parts out. One thing I can't see, with possibly little bits of tight bond residue which are still on the surface. I can't see that well under the natural light with my naked eye, so let's go to the dark room and check it out under the black light. If you can see it really popping out, there are little bits of glue which I couldn't see under the natural light. I'm just going to get a pencil and mark them out. So I've just marked out the center line. That'll help dovetailing, sort out the angle of the neck, and I've also installed a hole at the bottom. But when it gets to set up, it'll be able to have access to the truss rod, and it will also install a strap pin. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. I can't see any visible glue from the binding process, no little nicks or dings. Everything seems in pretty good order. So I'm pretty much finished with that in body prep. It's been bound, it's been scraped down. The next step, I'm going to send it over to dovetailing. After that, it'll go to assembly, and after that, it'll come back to me again for a final sand. We'll see you then.
Hey, I'm Sam. I work at Maton. I'm leading hand of assembly. I've worked here for about 3.5 years. I get the guitar straight after Dovetail, which is put this cut in the top here and on the bottom of the neck. And I basically fit that, put a fingerboard on, fret it, and get it nearly finished. So first step is sand the top of the guitar flat with a 100 grit. Gets any scratches out too that might have been put in from the dovetailer. I'll just lightly tap it in so that I can check if the neck is twisted at all. Then with a chisel, I'll just take a bit off each side and move it so that it is perfectly flat or perfectly straight with the body. So now I've gotten the neck so that it sits perfectly straight here with the body. I can sand along here so that the side of the neck will line up with the body. What I'm doing now is back cutting the underside of the neck. So I'm cutting in from the edge of the neck so that there won't be any gap when I glue it into the body. So I use this stick to check the action and where the centerline is on the guitar. So I can see that the neck's not perfectly straight with the body. It's just a tiny bit out. With this stick with a bit of sticky sandpaper, just take a couple of sands off this side of the neck, and that will basically bring it a little bit over. Yeah, so now you can see that the line perfectly lines up, the neck's totally straight. So once I've fitted the neck, I can start sanding the headstock. I do that on the linisher with 120 grit sandpaper. So once I've sanded it on the machine, I'll just go over it by hand to get any lumps out and bring it up to a higher grit. Alright, so next I grab a fingerboard from this fingerboard tray here. This one's just a standard board. And I'm basically just going to linish the back a couple of times to clean off the oil and make sure that it's nice and flat. Yep, so now I can feel it's flush all the way along. So I just want to get a nice even coat of glue. So I just grabbed it back off the rack. I'm just taking the clamps off after I've left it dry for 15 minutes. And yeah, now I can use my scraper and start blending the neck in to the fingerboard. So the next step, we're going to run it through our electric planer. So I sit the guitar in here, and that way when we cut, it cuts the action exactly the same every time. And with this saw, I'll just go over the fret slots and make sure that they're all the right depth. Just pressing the frets in now, all the way, after they've been tapped in. Alright, so the next step is filing the frets, and we've just basically got a file on this block which sits at a 45-degree angle to the top of the fretboard, so that files along the side. Steps is just filling up the tiny little holes under the frets. Poke a tiny bit of putty in there. And now I'm drilling the holes for the bridge to sit in. So this jig just sits over the fingerboard, clamps on, and then I just drill down these holes. If the guitar's going to have a pickup, we're at a pickup slot. And that's that.
Hi, it's Liam again. You're back in body prep. these guitars have basically left us, gone to assembly. They've had necks put on, assembled necks with fingerboards and frets put on. We're now going to final sand this, where it's basically the final gateway before paint shop. We're going to clean these things up, get any little scuffs and imperfections out, so they're pretty much looking perfect before it gets a coat of paint. First thing I'll do is give it a little bit of a look over, well, quite a thorough look over, and I'll be using as much light as I can to pick out any imperfections. Anything I find on the way, I'll probably just mark out, make my life easier so I can know it, I can fix them up. This current guitar we have is an Aussie, an EA80C. It's got a flamed blackwood, solid back and sides. It's a really nice thing. Pretty popular. These things are selling like hotcakes. Okay, before I actually start sanding, I'm just going to fill up any tiny little gaps which I found. The intricate rosettes tend to be a bit infamous for getting gaps, but this one doesn't seem particularly bad. So I started with the perimeter of the guitar, just making sure that all the binding is down flush with the rest of the back. After stroking the back, I'm just going to stick on this tungsten light just to give me a little better view of if I've taken everything out that I wanted to. Under this light, any imperfection should probably pop out. That looks pretty good to me. So I think we might move back to my bench and we'll finish off by hand. As you might remember before we sent this to assembly, we gave it a really good sand with 150 grit. Assuming that things came back, you know, not too dinged up and all I should be doing is working now to 180, which is a finer grit. This will be the finest sand which we do before we sand it to paint shop. So I'm just going to go over those sides again, take out that little ding which I've spotted before, and now the little things that I found. Ideally, we'd like to sand the guitar as little as possible. Always keep in mind that when we're sanding one side, we're always taking material off, and the last thing I want to do is over sand and make the binding too thin. So I'll constantly be checking the sides, even though I'm sanding this side. Alright, so after I've given the sides a bit of a sand down, I'll give it a look over again after blowing it down, just to make sure I haven't missed anything. Alright, so the face is another large flat surface. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of using the stroke sander again because the neck's already on there. And if I went there, I'd pretty much tear the entire neck off, and you don't really want that. So here's my best friend here, the orbital sander. Give it a nice even coverage, just so I don't create any dips. Alright, bling bling, here we are in the UV room. This stage is pretty important to a lot of the guitars we sand here. The reason we look at these guitars under UV light is just because it picks up things like glue, which we can't quite see under the natural light. So I've brought in little bits of masking tape, which you can see. I'm just going to use them as markers. Anything which I sort of see which is a little bit suspicious, like these, a little bit of glue, they're just going to pop out. So now that's essentially finished. One last thing I'm going to do, as confident as I am that I did an awesome job on this, I'm still going to palm it off to one of my team members to give just a second pair of eyes. So by the time it gets to paint, it's definitely perfect.
Hi, I'm Ben from Maton Guitars and I work in the paint shop, and today we're going to show you how we do it. Well, basically this is how we get them fresh off, or the start of our process. We're going to start off by taking the edge off this sharp binding. The reason for that is because the point is so sharp that the paint just won't hold onto it and it'll just peel off eventually, so I've got to round it off. Just using like an old file that's been ground down smooth, so just use the edges of it. And it's going to tape up the fingerboard so I don't get any paint on it. Basically now I've just got to put some paint on the headstock and heels to seal up all the end grain. Now I've just got to put the decal on. Just got to give it a bit of a scuff. Bam. Alright, it's time to put the sealer coat on with some paint. Got to prep one of the stain guitars. Okay, so now this has come back from bridging with a bridge this time. Now we just got to scuff it back smooth and get it ready for its final coat. A few different stains, but most of the time it's just vintage amber.
My name's Remy de Saint Aramone, and I'm the bridger at Maton Guitar. And I'm going to take you through the process of bridging a Maton guitar. So the first step I do is get it out of the rack, of course, and then I peel off the masking tape in the bridge area. Now I'm scuffing it with a 180 pad, which is roughing up the surface a bit where the bridge is going to sit. And then I proceed to scratch the bridge area, prepping it with some 100 sandpaper. Now I'm opening the locating pinholes, and then I proceed to find a bridge for it. Got a close relationship between the two. That's what it's all about. I'm checking the height of the neck in relation to the bridge. And it's about 1 mil, which is pretty good. Okay, this is the last stage in the bridging process. I'm undoing the clamp. Knocking the block out of it. That looks pretty clean. And then I clean the face of the bridge that is, and the guitar if it needs it. That's about it. Push the tape out. So, in the bin, check the face, have a good look around, you know, bit of water or glue, just clean it up. And that's basically it. Goes back in the rack.
Hi, my name's Nathan Robinson. I work in the setup room at Maton Guitars, mainly on electrics. What I'm about to do at the moment is basically get the guitar ready for the pickups to be put in, all the wiring done. So I'll be taking off the tape, adjusting the truss rod, doing a quick fret dress and cleanup. The first thing I'm going to be doing is guarding the guitar up, taping everywhere I have to in order to protect it. At Maton we use Grover machine heads for our electrics. Now that the guitar's been prepped, it goes off to Cactus to do the wiring.
I'm Cactus, I work at Maton Setup Department. I'm going to be installing all the electronics in this BB Deluxe.
All right, I'm Ron. You're in the setup room, which is basically the end of the process, where we get the guitar after it's been put all together. And what we do here is we dress the frets, fit the machine heads, the preamps, and string it up and play it and make sure it plays right. We're not doing anything more than just making sure all the frets are exactly the same height. They're all the same. all do is basically put our initials in it on the quality control sticker that's inside. So everyone's got their initials from each department where it's gone through. So the customer can see, yep, this person is the one who set it up, this person is the one who painted it, assembled it, built the body all the way through. Check it over, and downstairs it goes. It's all done. I move on to my next one.
Hi, I'm Matt. Welcome to Dispatch. Down here, we get all the products from setup down to here. We do the quality control, inspections, cleaning, casing, and then dispatch. Dispatch right around the world, and from anywhere from right through Europe and in Asia.